Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three in.
He hit him!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Tuesday. That means Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers, as he joins me, as is always, this morning from Columbus, Ohio, fresh off of last night's overtime. Like to call it a thriller, but wasn't exactly that. Indiana at Ohio State. Plenty of other things to get to talk to. We'll hear from Brian Evans, Mike Woodson, Xavier Johnson. Also on the program today, since it's Tuesday, it means Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox and BTN. Also Chronic Hoosier. So it's a loaded show. Kevin, how are you, man?
Morning. It's kind of fitting that I look outside my hotel room and there's a beautiful view of a cemetery, which is just a kind of a funeral-like atmosphere here with Indiana losing its fifth straight, right? In kind of fitting fashion here. Kind of a dreary, rainy day. I know it's going to rain all day, but all throughout the Midwest. But man, it was there for the taking. It would have been a huge win. Would have been a quad one win on the road. You're right there. You're up 4 with the ball, 1:20 left in regulation, and can't get defensive shots, some bad stops. And, Mike Woodson talked about really the momentum changing with that turnover where you only run about 10 or 12 seconds off the clock. Race trying to post feed to Trace, and then the critical mistake on the last stop where in the beginning it kind of looks like Trace is caught a little flat-footed out of position, but really it was Race losing his man and losing Liddell on the back side, but he's going to switch on Branham because Parker Stewart can't guard Branham the whole game. That's what it is. It's just a bind defensively, and they played such brilliant defense in the second half up to that point. But just one little breakdown, one little detail can cost you a win. But you really want to try to force a tougher shot there down the stretch instead of letting Liddell get an easy dunk to tie the game.
Yeah, this is not the first time Wisconsin. We just have to go back to the Wisconsin game where a last game at the end of the game where they have a chance, and as Mike Woodson said, they froze. So 2 games in a row, they have opportunities late in a game and just do not even come close to putting forth an effort to potentially give them a win, which that is very disappointing. Last night's game even more so because they worked very hard to put themselves in that position defensively. They did a good job again on Liddell for the most part, and they let him loose at the end. And it's like, damn, you do all that work, and then you let it go at the end, and it's mind-boggling. And people say, "Oh, we got to teach this team how to win." BS. That's BS. I know how to win. They know how to win. They're making just complete mental lapses. It's got nothing to do with knowing how to win. It just has to do with not making critical mistakes in pressure times. It doesn't matter if it's at the end of the game or not. When they're in pressure situations, they just don't do the things that they need to do. It's more about I'm starting to wonder about the basketball IQ collectively of this team. And they have certainly not played as a complete team this year. We just haven't seen that, and that continues to happen down the stretch.
Let's be honest, it also has to do a little bit with the talent on the floor, too. And I know some Indiana fans aren't going to want to hear that. But, I mean, other than the Northwestern game where you were shorthanded, you are facing ranked teams, and they're ranked teams for a reason because they have more talented players and because some of their guys step up and rise to the situation. Listen, Indiana, flashback there, wins that game going away if Trace Jackson Davis doesn't miss five or six free throws in the second half, and he's supposed to be your guy. All right, let's not, Anthony Leal gets an opportunity, former Mr. Basketball, misses 2 free throws at the end of the first half.
There's another point.
Those are hidden points.
Well, and that's twice. People complain about this player and that player. And I got sick of that a long time ago. Why didn't Christian Lander play? Why didn't Christian Lander play? Well, there's probably a reason he wasn't playing. Well, as we found out, sometimes it was injury related, sometimes it wasn't. But there was always a reason. Why didn't Anthony Leal playing? Why didn't Anthony Leal playing? Well, there's probably a reason. Well, he had an opportunity at Northwestern. He had an opportunity last night and did not take advantage of either of those opportunities. As a matter of fact, the missing those 2 free throws, that's just terrible. You're looked at as, this is a shooter, man. He's going to be able to come shoot. You got to knock down free throws, man. Indiana as a team collectively, there was only 3 people that shot free throws last night. Those 2 by Anthony Leal, he only got 2 of those. The only 2 other people shot free throws the entire night for Indiana, Trace Jackson Davis and Xavier Johnson, who was perfect at the line of 10 of 10. Trace Jackson, not nearly as much. He was like 9 of 17. I'll have to pull it back up.
7 of 13, yeah. And Xavier Johnson too, another erratic game. He started with 5 turnovers. Obviously did some good things in the second half, got to the line, made some free throws. But in overtime, just some bad decision making on some drives, and that's the thing. It was kind of a roller coaster game for him, and I thought it encapsulated what the team went through, which was, you get down 11 at the second half, and you come back and you tie the game, you take a 4-point lead. You have Ohio State's on the ropes. Ohio State is supposed to be the more tired team, right? But you give them energy, you give them life, and then they take it and ride it in the overtime session. And some bad shots by Xavier Johnson in OT as well, for as well as he played to get him back in the second half. And that's playing a complete game, and in this case it was 45 minutes, and you got to play the full 45 minutes.
Yeah, and we haven't seen this team play 40 minutes this season. Maybe against Ohio State, the game that they beat them in. But yeah, there's just been too many games where they have had the chance to beat their opponent and they haven't. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen an NCAA tournament worthy team out of this squad, other than some half efforts against some teams, the win against Ohio State, things like that. But other than that, for the most part, this is not a team that would deserve to be in the tournament from an eye test. They just play too many games to where you see that, wow, they could win, but they don't. And you are right. It does have a lot to do with personnel, and not just in ability. It's personnel. You've got a lot of people that you have had to bring together that worked and came from different directions. And man, that's tough. I don't care if you're having what's that show on TV, Big Brother? If it's Big Brother, if you're adopting people, when you bring multiple personalities together, and in this situation, it's supposed to work because everyone's supposed to be going with the same goal in mind, but that's not always the case. People have different ways of doing things in their own head, Kevin.
Well, yeah, the transfer model can work sometimes. We've gone from college basketball in the last decade to the one and done model, now to the transfer model where people. Let me remind you something. Purdue brought back 94% of its scoring. A lot of guys, they're in first in the Big Ten right now. There's something to be said for continuity. I still believe in it. I still believe that's how you build a team. And that's something that Indiana's going to have to establish. And you kind of hope that with Mike Woodson and his staff, they're obviously recruiting a lot of guards. But it's not important just to have them there for 1 year. You got to keep them there, and maybe sprinkle in transfer here and there, a guy that can help your roster. But I think if you're over reliant on it, and you looked at last night with Trey Galloway's injury, you had 3 transfers in the starting lineup. So to go with Race and Trace, who have a little bit of continuity and chemistry together, but you're meshing them with 3 new guys, and that's hard to do. But you're 24 games in, you're 25 games in. You would hope by now there would be a little cohesiveness and chemistry on the offensive and defensive end, and we haven't seen it here in these last 5 games as well. And another interesting stat: last 6 games since that huge game against Penn State when they went 10-13 from 3. Last 6 games, under 32% from 3-point range. Had the game ended in regulation, they would have been, I think, 6-14, 6-15, but then you missed 5 in overtime. So you're back below in the low 30 percentile there. They could have really used one more 3 too. Tamar Bates, who had hit some big shots, had an opportunity for 3. Just couldn't quite get it. It was his 19th birthday last night. I thought he did some good things, hit some big shots, but ultimately, just couldn't get it done in a big moment.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming Xavier Johnson for the last bit of that regulation, but you've got to have complete thought of we've got to get this up the floor, and they wasted time. That was a wasted opportunity. You could have potentially caught Ohio State off guard. You could have caught them out of position. If you hustle, you put yourself in a position of catching someone off guard, because all they have to do is make that one mistake, leave a crack. He could have potentially got to the rim and drawn a foul, because that's one of the things he did do well last night. He went to the free throw line 10 times, or he shot 10 free throws. He gets to the line and draws that foul, baby. That game's over. But he doesn't push it. He pulls up for a ill-advised 3 that ends up getting partially blocked.
Yeah, Tari Wheeler got him there, and they asked him whether he was fouled, and he kind of gave the no comment. But it looked like a fairly clean play by Wheeler, who's a very good defender. But I agree. Or even have someone trail with you, pass to someone. Find an open shot, because that was not a good shot in that situation. You're taking a challenge contested shot.
Well, and that's another thing. This falls on Mike Woodson. You have to have a last second play built in all the time, and your team has to know it's time to go to this. If it's under 10 seconds, here's our play that we're running all the time. That has to be built in, so you don't have to discuss it. So you don't have to call timeout. You can scream it coming down the floor. XY, XY, XY. Boom. None of that happened. None of that. They had actually, and I don't want to put it all on 5 seconds, but you can get a lot done in 5 seconds if you're prepared. They're not prepared. They are not prepared for that situation. And that it caught him. It cost him the game, because you can get – I've seen teams win games with far less time on the clock. We got to take a break. I got to get off my soapbox. Mike DeCourcy is going to join us next. We got plenty to get to. Looking forward to that. Kevin Brockway from CNHI is with us right now. Back with more, brought to you by our good friends at Southern Stone Restaurant, located at Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington. Each Monday night at 7:05. You can find Don Fisher and Mike Woodson with Inside Indiana Basketball. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration
or... All right.
How is Kevin doing this morning?
Good. I was going to say, I've got we would call it those Bubba things in my car, so.
I'm not concerned about him. I'll get him.
Yeah.
Kevin, what's your favorite Big Ten town to visit?
I have not been to Madison.
Wow. And I've heard that's like the prettiest.
Madison is really nice. Yeah, Madison is nice.
I will get there when next time Indiana plays them.
Yeah.
In football and basketball, but
yeah.
Iowa City's pretty nice, pretty good college town.
Yeah,
Are you still heading up to Minneapolis a couple weeks or next week or whatever it is?
What's that?
No, Minneapolis is this Sunday, and I'm going to miss it. I thought Ann Arbor was really nice. I liked Ann Arbor actually also. Yeah.
Is it college town?
Yeah, Ann Arbor is not a bad college town. East Lansing, a little,
This isn't a bias, but I've heard Purdue's the ugliest.
It is. The whole town is, I call it a mortuary school.
A mortuary school, wow.
West Lafayette looks like a mortuary school. It looks like the mortuary town. It does. Yeah. Everything is institutional brick.
Yeah.
And of course they have to be brown, black, and gold for their colors to make it that much less appealing on the eye. Mike, I brought up the question of ugly and pretty college towns.
The river running through the town is kind of nice. That's kind of cool.
The Wabash.
But that's not a river. That's a sewage release from West Lafayette to East Lafayette.
Yeah.
That's like the LA has those big deals running down through there. That's West Lafayette's version of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you take that drive down from like the last exit before you head to Chicago, that's a pretty drive down the river, I think.
As long as you hold your nose. I'm just teasing. It's so easy. I'm just kidding. Mike, how are you doing today, man?
Can you hear us, Mike? Oh, Mike, you're gonna have to rejoin. We can't hear you like last time that's happened. All right, we're coming back from break, Jim.
Okay.
The station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and it is an absolutely gorgeous, rainy day here in central Indiana. Was it yesterday? I was just bragging about, man, there's not a cloud in the sky. Look out the window, and it's solid blue, and today it is solid dark gray, but we've got Mike DeCourcy to brighten things for us. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I cannot complain. We've got Kevin Brockway here, and all you can do is look at the rain and say, I got a lot of stuff to do today anyway, so there's no reason to go out.
I was telling, Jim before about, because I'm staying in that Fairfield Inn, that Marriott that overlooks the cemetery, which is kind of apropos for where Indiana is right now.
Oh no!
Wow! You just walked into a morbid. We were talking about mortuaries before in the break. So West Lafayette looked like a mortuary school. Just kidding though. But we got to brighten things up for Mike. But plenty of other good things going on. Not good last night for Indiana, as we talked. A game that again they had within their grasp, and they just don't do the things to win the game in pure and simple language.
Yeah, I mean, if they'd held their defensive integrity on the last Ohio State possession, they would at least have been able to challenge Liddell's shot. And instead, everybody went for the basketball. I mean, literally everybody defending the lane at that point went for the basketball up at the free throw line. It made it an easy pass and an opportunity for Liddell to dunk. And I mean, that was an enormous play that worked out for the Buckeyes. And, IU just without having Rob Finney, they are so limited at point guard. It's not, not just Xavier Johnson's what he is not great at. It's just that he has to play so many minutes, and it's clear that it's affected his ability to perform.
Without question. And they just, I don't know. You can't say that they wore out, but they had the thing that killed me is their last two possessions. They were just empty, and they weren't good possessions. And if they score either time, that it almost puts the game away because they were already up, and they just have their last two possessions are completely empty. Playing very where's the word I'm looking for? Very loosely, but cavalier. They were very cavalier. They weren't playing with, we've got this game in our hands, let's seal it here. Nah, it was like it's another play. And to me, I'm tired of saying the team doesn't know how to win. It's more than that. That's bull. You learn how to win when you're growing up. Everybody knows how to win. It's playing smartly. Well, but playing smartly and playing smartly together. That's what I don't think they do. They don't. The IQ of this team. I hate to challenge that, but it's really. I wonder about it, and the cohesiveness is absolutely not there.
Well, I thought one of the problems that they had last night was that they struggled against a very good defensive team to get high quality shots, and they were fortunate that Tamar Bates was as terrific as he was in crunch time. He made difficult shots to get them the lead, to get them to extend the lead to where not to a huge lead, but to where it seemed like they might be able to get out of there. And then when it came time to do it again, you've already asked for more than was warranted a couple of times, and it was answered positively. You're probably not going to get that to happen again. You needed to get something of a better quality, and they were unable to do that. I go back to the fact that if you look at, there are two factors, I think, more than anything that contribute to their current streak. And one of them is that a lot of teams in college basketball would lose most or all of the games that the Hoosiers are losing because of the challenge of them. Not many teams. Until Saturday when Iowa State went into Columbus and won, literally no one had done that this year. So there's that, the challenge on the schedule, IU schedule being a bit backloaded. And then there's the fact that you don't have Rob Finney. And Indiana's best basketball this season has been played when they had both point guards available and both contributing at a high level. When they had both of them, it tempers some of the things at which Xavier is not good at and emphasizes those he is, because he's not dependent on to be the calming leader of the offense. He's more of a dynamic presence then. And Finney is someone, if you watched last night, Ohio State went under every screen that was set for Xavier Johnson on the perimeter. You see guys slide under screens and try to get back into the play quickly because they don't want the opponent to get off the shot, but they also don't want the roll man to get released because that's their real fear. Ohio State was going so far under the screens, they were practically in Pittsburgh by the time they got, they were begging Xavier Johnson to take that shot, and he chose probably wisely not to, but it made it so much easier in certain circumstances for the Buckeyes to defend IU.
Mike, here's another area where I think they really miss Finney is, you look at the last few games, Johnny Davis, Branham, putting him in the bind, his perimeter defense, you could sick him on those guys, maybe frustrate them a little bit, or get, at least he's got that ability that Parker Stewart doesn't have. Because if you look at that last defensive possession, it started with that fear of Branham and so many guys switching on him that sprung Liddell 3. And if you have a perimeter guy, and I think that's what they're really missing, is that kind of perimeter defender that can harass or shut down a Johnny Davis, shut down a Branham, which shut up that that last basket. And Branham also got fouled and made 2 free throws as well.
Yeah, and I think that's another area also to reinforce your point where they missed Trey Galloway last night, because he might have been able to take some of those possessions. Maybe not all of them would be ideal, but some of them to give them a better presence than they're getting. We talked before about whether they're better with two shooting wings or whether Galloway starting. It limits your offensive ability a little bit, but it provides so much in terms of ball movement and quickness on the perimeter. And him not being available means that you have no choice but to play with the two relatively stationary wings. And that affected them in particular with Branham, who is really developing into a great college guard.
Is the freshman of the year in the Big Ten, or is McGowan's?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is Branham the freshman of the year in the Big Ten, or McGowan's?
Yeah, for me, it would be either Chucky Hepburn or Branham. I'm not super big on players on a one-win team getting individual awards. No slight to Trey, but it's easier. There was a comment one of my friends in coaching made once. Somebody has to score the points because you're not going to shut anybody out. And Trey is doing the best he can, but it's not as hard to do what he's doing as it is to do. Obviously, I mean, if you saw last night's game, I mean, Branham, once Ohio State let the lead go, I mean, Branham is in a crucible on every possession because he has to make something happen. Jamari Wheeler is a good, solid college point guard, but he's not dynamic offensively. He's a defender first and a one pass point guard. Gets the ball out of his hands and then it belongs to everybody else until it comes back to him. And if he's open, he should shoot it more than he does. But he can make that shot. But he's not a facilitator. He's not a creator. So it has to be Branham. And you saw last night, what he was able to do in those circumstances. He was huge in that victory.
He killed Indiana, and Andy says that leaving Stewart on Branham was not smart in essence, but I don't know. They were so shorthanded. Who else are you going to put on him? That was the problem. Miller Kopp can't guard him. Xavier had his hands full and he did a hell of a job to stay out of foul trouble with what his record has been so far this season. So I don't know who else they could have put on him, to be honest with you, without Trey Galloway available. But he certainly killed Indiana, and they could not get a stop on him, especially when they needed to. And that was a critical point of the game. And then follow up on what you were saying, Indiana not having, they just don't have a shooter. They've got some people they thought were going to be shooters, but they don't have a guy who, when they need a bucket, that they can say he will get us a bucket. Trace Jackson sometimes, but that's not every time, or a shooter. We know that he'll get us a score. They don't have that guy.
I would say that it should be Trace, but I'm gonna say that because of how the perimeter makes it easier to guard IU, that it's not Trace's fault. Again, you don't have to worry. Miller and Parker are the kinds of players that opposing coaches say, if he makes 2, I'll worry about it, and if he makes 3, I'll panic. But they don't worry about him. They're going to stay in the play. But if it's do I dig on one of the best low post scorers in college basketball, Trace Jackson Davis, or do I stay pinned to Miller, Copper, Parker Stewart? They say, oh, let's go. Let's get in there. We don't have to worry that much about these guys burying us. And so they do. And it's made it really hard for Trace. He's not been able to be productive at the level that he's capable of. He's one of the best players in the Big Ten, but the circumstance is not allowing him to show that. And that's again, some of that's opposition driven, some of it's injury driven on his own team, and some of it's the limitations of the players who are available.
Last night, he was only 3 of 9, but worse, he was 7 of 13 at the free throw line. Kevin.
Yeah, and I was going to point that out. Left some points out there. Also, I like when he's active on the offensive boards. He did a little of that in the first half. Not quite as much in the second half that you'd want to see. But I agree in terms of he's in a bind, like you said. And they were, they were trying to get the ball to him, but Race had a bad post-entry pass, and that's when it all went downhill coming out of that timeout. And you only bleed 12 seconds off the shot clock there.
Exactly. Situationally, they're a team because of the way they're constructed. Their execution has to be at a high level on almost every trip. I mean, they can't afford to execute badly because you're not overwhelmingly tall. You don't have those proficient shooters. You're not built to be an elite defensive team. So your execution has to be near perfect, and it hasn't been.
And in his time of needing somebody else to step up, they haven't had that, whether it's been Anthony Leo, who's had a couple of opportunities here, whether it's been Northwestern or last night. And, he misses his shot, but he gets to go to the free throw line, and he misses 2 free throws, critical for Indiana. Only had 3 guys go to the line. He was one of them, known as a shooter, and misses both. That really hurt because I think that was at the end of the first half too, I believe. And then Geronimo played only 3 minutes, so he's not in there. Tamar Bates plays 25 minutes. He was 3 of 11. He scored 7 points, 1 of 4 behind the line, and 5 rebounds. But they're just not getting anything from the bench either right now.
True, but they're going deeper into the bench than they would want in terms of the personnel they're pulling off. They didn't have Trey Galloway. If Rob and Trey were available, those are your first 2 guys off the bench.
Absolutely.
Or you're playing 2 points and Parker's your first guy off the bench. That makes you a different team. I remember in January, like every time I turned on IU, they're playing at Assembly Hall, and you start to get the impression that at some point they're going to pay for this. That the schedule was so backloaded. And I know why that's done. I mean, they're a big brand, and if they're a high quality team, they are going to draw huge audiences. And so that's why the biggest games are at the end. It's not unique to Indiana. It's like that for Duke. It's like that for Gonzaga this weekend. They go to San Francisco, to St. Mary's. Probably the 2 toughest games on their schedule, held to the end because they want to put Gonzaga in some jeopardy, because they're going to have to go there eventually, and they want to send them there when more people are watching. So that's been IU's burden, is that their brand has been ahead of the team for at least a dozen years, if not longer. And so they get that treatment like, okay, we want to see you in a big game. Yeah, but we're not that good yet. And so this is going to be really hard for us.
I'm trying to find your bracket here at college CBB on Fox, at CBB on Fox. Are they on the first 4 out right now, Indiana?
Today's bracket doesn't release until this afternoon. But I can say that the results of the last 2 weeks have not been positive for the Hoosiers.
Yep. The good thing is,
19 wins. Does that get them in? They win the next 3.
I hadn't viewed it that way, but let me give it a look and see where that puts them. Right now, they are at 16-10. So
19-11 at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I've always said that I didn't expect them to win that game last night, and it would be great. But if they come home and they beat Maryland, they go to Minnesota, they beat them, they come back home and beat a Rutgers team that has been playing well, that gives them 19 wins. They're going to go to Purdue and lose that game, but 19 and what that would make them 19 and 12. Do they have to win a game? 19-11. Does that get them in, or do they have to win?
It would depend on who it was against. that's if they did that, what you just said, they're probably back inside the first four at minimum. And because it would really help them to beat Rutgers, because Rutgers is hanging around 11-12 for most people now. So if you take them out, you're taking out the competition. Those games are really important. It's like in hockey, it's a 4-point game, or in soccer, it's a 6-point game, because you're taking away from your opposition and giving to yourself. So that's what this is. This is like a 6-point game in soccer, where you're playing that you're 1-2 in a league and you're trying to get ahead of the first place team. Well, you take away the 3 points they would get if they beat you, and you add to your total, so it's considered a 6-point game. And that's what this is for IU if they win these next two. If they don't beat Minnesota and Maryland, then their only way back in is to beat Purdue, or to go to Indy and get a couple of wins against teams that are in the field. They cannot afford to lose these next two under any circumstance. And then it comes down to Rutgers, and again, they need that game. I'd say to feel good going into Indy, that you can't hurt yourself much, they have to win the next three.
Oh, I agree. And I've thought that. I thought that before. Like I said, I'm like, you know what? I don't think they're going to win at Ohio State. And they didn't, but they have to win these next 3 games, which would put them at 19 wins. You're not going to beat Purdue, like I said. And I don't know if they have to win a game at the Big Ten tournament, but this is very reminiscent of 2016, Archie's first season. It's exactly where they were. They needed to win a game against Ohio State, and they didn't get that done and missed the tournament. And I think that's exactly where they're going to end up if they can manage to win these 3 games, get out of their head from this 5-game losing streak. And if they can do that. But it worries me them going to the Big Ten tournament with something to play for and somebody else having a reason to either beat them or someone else having a reason to play for. It just seems like that they always get one-upped by someone else who is working hard.
Well, it's likely that they will play somebody that also has something at stake, if at minimum seeding. It's likely that if they win those 3, I don't think that it's probably not going to change their standing much. So right now they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're if they play, it depends on where that puts them. I mean, if they play in Iowa or Rutgers again, it would really help them to win. In that circumstance, if they play below them, the teams that aren't going, Penn State, Maryland, Northwestern, Minnesota, again, a non-losable game. But a lot of that, it's just hard to predict at this point what they would need to do without knowing where they'll be in the bracket. I can only say that these 3 games coming up are essential. Unless they intend to go up to West Lafayette and pull that one off, which would be obviously great for the Hoosiers and would probably end it. I mean, if they were to win if they were to go 3-1 with a win over over Purdue, there would be less pressure on them to do something in Indy.
They'd be an AQ, baby. They'd be an AQ. If they go to West Lafayette and win, they just get an AQ automatic qualifier.
Doesn't work like that.
Hey, we've got the great Mike DeCourcy with us from the Sporting News, Fox BTN, back along with Kevin Brockway from CNHI right after this. Brought to you by our good friends Reynolds Family Dentistry down in Sellersburg, Indiana. If you need that championship smile, go see Dr. J. He'll give it to you today. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
An Evansville tradition.
So, Mike, when you're trying to actually find the bracket specifically, do you go to Twitter or is it a website?
You can you can find it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
All right, so like when I go to Twitter, where do I find it on Twitter? Is it just in the?
Well, you'd have to search it on Twitter. It's harder because they do constantly post.
Now, I do see one thing that is a little surprising. They posted national title odds for women's college basketball, and they've got 10 teams listed. Indiana, not one of them.
Interesting.
Surprising.
Well, they lost 2 in a row to Iowa. They're kind of falling on hard times.
Caitlin Clark, man.
Losing at Iowa is no. They just got Mackenzie Holmes back, so losing at Iowa is not.
They're gonna have Maryland on. They're gonna have Maryland on Friday too. If they lose that game, who knows if they're gonna host or not? They might still host, but.
Dude, Fox College Hoops puts out a ton of great stuff.
They do a nice job.
They're better than ESPN. They make you watch the Watch ESPN app whenever their games run over instead of putting on an alternate channel. And that's a separate conversation, but
Mike, 2 things I'd love to talk about in the next segment. Of course, Juwan Howard.
Right.
And Big Ten
Jim,
TV.
I've got that Tom Izzo clip if you want to use that for the Juwan Howard conversation. I didn't mention that earlier.
Yeah, we're not going to use the whole thing because it's 4 minutes long, but
I've got a minute of it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's like a minute 20. He just says some great stuff, but yeah, we'll use that. And then Big Ten TV contracts, because that obviously affects Fox. How does that BTN has a relationship with Fox, right?
It's actually 51% owned by Fox.
So how would that work if someone else were to get the rights to the Big Ten games?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on
say it was NBC.
Well, NBC, let's just say, if
and I don't want to waste this because we'll talk about this, but
yeah,
we got 20 seconds.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and bring us back.
% financing over 48 months. And you can always get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. It is a beautiful rainy day here in central Indiana. Temperatures are going to be nice, but it's a good day to do laundry and whatever else you got to do, because I've got plenty of it stacked up. We're joined by the great Mike DeCourcy from Fox BTN and the Sporting News, Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers as well. Mike, Juwan Howard, of course, everybody, you'd have to be under a rock to not see what happened the other night. That was a coach taking a swing at somebody else. It's not unprecedented, and it wasn't a swing, but I remember you go back to the 70s, if you remember that rap on the back of the head that Bob Knight gave Joby Hall. It was supposed to be like a friendly on the way out, but he really gave it to him Bob Knight-esque style. Bob Knight was 6'6", people, and was just a big guy. And he popped him on the back of the head, I remember, and Joe Hall didn't like that.
Right.
That was a different situation, obviously, but a coach taking a swing at anybody, but it was another coach. But and this is his second infraction. This is the second time that we've seen him have this blow up with another Big Ten coach in 2 years in a row. And it's like, man, that's a pattern, and it's a pattern that is progressing.
Escalating. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And what bothered me about this circumstance was that it was grown out of nothing. I mean, Juwan Howard made the decision to continue to compete in the final 22 seconds of that game. At 22 seconds, Devontae Jones scored a layup. I believe it was a layup for the Wolverines. And at that point, they turned the shot clock off because there's not 30 seconds left. So they turned the shot clock off. So Wisconsin would have almost certainly, I mean, like as certain as one can be without actually seeing it happen, if left to its own devices, would have inbounded the basketball, dribbled it up to half court, stood there for 10, 11, 12 seconds, and as the clock rolled out, and then everybody would have left, shaking hands, and everybody would have left. But Juwan chose to continue to compete. Now, that's his prerogative. No complaint about the fact that he continued to compete. It's your team. There's 40 minutes in the game. If you want to be pressing down 30, down 14, whatever, that's okay. If you want to continue to foul until the very buzzer, that's okay. But you then you have no standing, zero, to complain about the other coach continuing to coach his team. You made the decision to continue the competition beyond its logical conclusion. So you can't complain because the other team is continuing to coach. That's preposterous and indefensible. And he manufactured this anger out of that. And that anger spilled over in the ways that you saw and in the ways that have now gotten him suspended for the final 5 games of the regular season.
Enough?
Yes, it is. It may create, depending on how the bracket turns out, it may create an uncomfortable situation at the Big Ten tournament. But what would probably happen if Wisconsin and Michigan were to find itself on opposite sides of a bracket, in the little mini bracket, Wisconsin here, Michigan here, they'd probably shake hands before the game and make sure that everybody understood that we're going back to hooping and it would be all good. But I think 5 games is reasonable. Now, I know some people thought he should be fired, and I've seen that from some media figures. And I don't believe in that. I believe in trying to repair what's reparable. And I don't think because Juwan yelled at Mark Turgeon once and then did this, that means that those problems can't be addressed and fixed. As a young journalist, I made mistakes that led to me taking a swing at another reporter, not anything like that, but things in my profession that weren't the best, that were mistakes. And so if somebody had said, "That's it, Mike, you're never writing again. What am I doing for the rest of my life?" You fix the mistakes. You address them. Now, I think it was pretty clear in the statement that UM put out and the statement that Juwan put out that they're going to endeavor to repair this. What form that takes place, I don't know, and I don't know that I need to know. I think it needs to go beyond "don't do it again." I don't think that's going to fix the problem. But I do think that it needs to be addressed and will be addressed.
Is he on Kevin? You think he would be put on any type of zero tolerance type of situation?
Well, maybe some anger management training might be pretty good. I would think, something like that. You could perhaps start there. I think that's what happens a lot of times when you have these kind of altercations and dust ups. I think that's probably where it starts. But you also, yeah, exactly. I think that he's got a few strikes against him. I do think the success of last year, getting to the Elite Eight, plays into it somewhat. This is not a coach they're looking to get rid of. And he's a native son. He's an alma mater, Fab Five guy. They're trying to, repair that relationship a little after, what happened. And don't forget, reportedly, the Turgeon incident stemmed from a comment about the banners and so forth. So I think that those are all interesting things. But I think Michigan wants this to work, having Juwan Howard as their head coach.
College basketball wants it to work. I think it's good for the Big Ten for it to work, to have characters. I miss, Bob Knight and Curl Over going at it. Gene Katie, I couldn't think of his name.
I'm sure he'll appreciate being referred to as that.
Oh, I know. Well, actually, I should call Mr. Ludu
yes.
that. But he was also one of those characters back in the day, and you miss that stuff. But I do think this. Can you imagine had that been Bob Knight and he took a swing at another coach? Does he get a 5-game suspension, or is that? And this is back in the day where this stuff is way more acceptable.
When in Bob's career, though, are you talking about? Is it early in his career, or is it after he's done this, and this?
Very true. Very true.
This is young in his career. Look, if this hadn't come up, the Turge thing would have, it was a footnote. I mean, he yelled at the other coach and he got thrown out of the game. I mean, how many coaches have we seen?
Well, I think it was more about what had happened, though, because it led to the teams getting involved in the same thing.
In this case, yeah. But what I'm saying
it led to players throwing punches.
But absolutely, and that's why this case was really problematic. But the Turge thing from a year ago was not a big deal. I mean, it was not great, but it wasn't a huge deal. It just gets compounded. Now you have had a problem with 1/7 of the coaches in your league, with 1/7 of the opposing benches, let's say, since Turge isn't coaching anymore. That's a lot. I mean, in most leagues, in most circumstances, the coaches get along pretty well most of the time. And certainly in this league, I've been pretty closely associated with it for a dozen years. And we haven't had this happen much. And we don't have in the Big Ten many circumstances where there's a long-standing bitterness between this coach and that coach. Most of them get along pretty well. And the leagues work better then when it's like that. The competition, furious on the floor for 40 minutes. When it's over, shake hands or don't. But acknowledge the other person and then go on. That's what makes a good league. And this is true. When I was covering Cincinnati, and yes, 5, there were times when I wanted to. I remember when Cincinnati played St. Louis one year. It must have been the road because went out afterward, the hotel bar, whatever, and was around the Cincinnati staff members. And Charlie Spoonhour came in and had a beer with Huggins from St. Louis, one of the most charming coaches of all time. But that's what happened. They were really good friends, and they, when they were playing each other, they were, scrapping and fighting and all that stuff to win. But when it was over, it was over. And I think there's some value to that. I think that's what the Big Ten aspires to, that mutual respect but fierce competition.
Who wouldn't want to have a beer with Huggy Bear? I mean, that's just like a bucket list thing there.
I don't know if you remember Requiem of the Big East on ESPN when Dave Gavitt talked about as much as Boeheim and John Thompson hated each other, and then they had them play golf together, and they found maybe Kevin Warren should do that. Have Greg Gard and Juwan Howard play golf together.
Well, the movie Days of Thunder, there's a scene in there where they make the two antagonists, Tom Cruise's character and the other guy, ride together in a rental. They have separate rental cars. That's where they're banging each other on the beach. The true story was that Bill France, who was the president of NASCAR at the time, made Dale Earnhardt and I think it was one of the Bodines who had been wrecking each other in wrecks. They said, that's enough. Said, he called them both, said, what's your schedule Tuesday? He said, I'm kind of busy. He said, we've got dinner here at 7:00. And he hung up, and both of them, he put them both in a rental car, made them drive to dinner together because they had just been, going through all that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be kind of funny.
Well, I think that the Big Ten, first of all, let's say this. Let's put this on the record. Big Ten handled this perfectly. The suspension that he got was warranted. I thought there was an overreaction to from some people who wanted to dismiss him I thought that was an overreaction. I also thought there was an overreaction to what Guard did, trying to mitigate Howard's actions. Look, what Guard did wasn't good. Him grabbing his elbow was not good. Trying to get in front of him to try to explain himself, not good. And the $10,000 fine, good. That's fine. I think that shows that you realize that his actions contributed in some small way to this. And I think that's exactly
absolutely.
Right. And then when we watched the tape, the 3 players, each one that we identified and watching the tape, they got the exact right 3 players. They didn't throw anybody in there that didn't need to be in there relative to the tape on who was swinging. So I thought the Big Ten handled this absolutely beautifully. And I think the league will be better for this. This was a good opportunity for Kevin Warren as commissioner to hand, he came into an absolute thunderstorm, hurricane, whatever you want to call it. When he was hired, begins his tenure in January of 2020, and then 2 months later, he's sitting up on a podium having to cancel the Big Ten tournament. And then from there, with the pandemic, none of his circumstances were typical, easy, normal. Everything was abnormal. So it was a rough first 18 months for him. And this was an opportunity for him now 2 years in to handle a difficult situation. And whatever, just as we don't know who made the decision to cancel football initially in the fall of 2020, we don't know exactly who made those decisions, but they were all ascribed to him. Okay, well, when it gets done perfectly, then he gets all the credit for this too. And Rick Boyages, I'm sure, had a lot to do with it, the associate commissioner for basketball. But this goes on Kevin Warren's record, and it should be a shining example of handling a difficult situation perfectly.
And the godfather of Big Ten basketball was asked about, should the handshake line be dissolved, which I think is absolutely ludicrous, but he does as well. But he much more eloquently answered it. And I'm speaking of Michigan State coach Tom Izzo. Let's hear what he had to say.
Oh, my God.
Have you heard that?
Oh, my God, I have. And I do got to comment on that, since that's not insulting to anybody. That, to me, would be the biggest farce, joke, ridiculous nature of anything I've ever heard of. We've already taught these poor 18-year-olds that when you're told to go to class and you don't like it, you can leave. We've already told these kids, if you're not happy, you can do something else. We've already told these kids that it's hard to hold them accountable, and now we're going to tell them to not man up and walk down a line on somebody who's kicked your butt and have enough class to shake their hand is utterly ridiculous. So if the president said it, I think he's full of it. If the best coach in America said it, I think that gets me way more than this incident.
And I could not agree more. And I love that he said that, but it takes someone like Tom Izzo to say that. But he's exactly
what he didn't say there, Jim, was he was referring to me. I understand his point, but
did you suggest that? Because I didn't see that.
I've said that for many years, that the handshake lines are a pointless exercise, because they are. Because most of the time I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm doing it because if I don't, everybody will say I'm a bad sport. I'm doing it because I have to. In certain circumstances, Raphael Davis was on us as a regular panelist. Raphael Davis, the Purdue great, said that he had some meaningful experiences going through the handshake line, and he actually specifically cited Tom Izzo after the last time they played, him complimenting him and what it meant to him to hear that. And also going through the line to shake James Blackman's hand when they played IU, because he and James went back to playing middle school basketball together.
And Tom mentioned that in that further statement, if it went on, that he talked about Trace Jackson Davis and all these other players that he loved to get to talk to and tell them what a great person.
You don't need a handshake line to do that. You can go wander out on the floor after the game and tell Trace that you love playing against him. You can do that. But you don't have to have this choreographed dance that's an obligation that is there as an obligation, because if you don't do it, the media will criticize you for it. That's one of the things I wrote in my column about Juwan and the circumstance on Sunday, was that if he had walked away from the handshake line, which he should have done under the circumstances because of the anger that he manufactured, he should have walked away and he would have been criticized for it, but he wouldn't be suspended for the last 5 games of the year. He would just be getting reamed a little bit on Twitter. And certain people on Big Ten basketball and beyond probably would have defended him for doing it, because I think that they are a charade, and I've seen too many of them that are charades. And I remember I said this on a radio show yesterday. When you were in Little League, they made you do this, and you'd go slap hands or whatever and say good game. And by the time you got halfway through, you were so bored with the exercise that you'd say game. You wouldn't even say good because it was too much work to say both words. I mean, and that's what one of these is most of the time. Now, as I said, there are meaningful exchanges in them, certainly. But there are way too many, oh, Coach K shouldn't have told that guy to do this. Or, oh, they didn't shake hands well enough. Or, oh, my goodness, a fight broke out. I mean, there's too much of that. It's something that exists on the off chance it might create something that sports media can stop talking about sports for a while, which is something that way too many in the sports media covet beyond beyond everything but money. The opportunity to not talk about sports is so coveted by so many in sports media. It's revolting.
Because it's different. It's new. It's something different.
Yeah, why sit here and talk about Johnny Davis and how great he was on Saturday and how he had every shot in the book on Sunday, and talk about how wonderful he was, when we could talk you could talk about whether or not Bill Belichick gave the proper handshake. That's what goes on too much. And if you take this away, then that goes away. That's my problem with it. And again, I'm not arguing to pass a rule against it or anything like that. I'm just saying that it should not be a demand. It should not be something that is so rote that if you don't do it, then you get reamed.
Make sure you give Mike a follow, and make sure you go to @CBB on Fox for his Bracketology is coming out today. You know when that's going to hit?
Yeah, usually it comes out around 12:31, something like that.
So look for that. You can see the new bracket, as well as following him on Fox and BTN, and give him a follow on Twitter as well. Mike, I cannot thank you enough as always. Appreciate you, my man.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great week.
Me and Kevin and myself will be back with more on here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Remax Realty. If you're in a home in the Indianapolis area, in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore's 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. We're back with Kevin Brockway right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Start for New Year. We'll talk about your column now. Do you talk about anything in the column, or is it just a game story?
I did a game story. I did something on Parker Stewart, and I did my Beyond the Arc, which is going to post this afternoon.
Boy, Brian Evans, he kind of lit into Parker Stewart last night. And I'll be honest with you,
I think the clip I have mentions a little bit of that, if you want to play that this segment.
And I'll be honest with you, I kind of walk on eggshells with him because of knowing, his entire situation. But that has actually run its course for me. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine, but then go someplace and deal. If you're having issues to deal with, then go someplace and deal with them. Go get yourself straight, because I'm not sure that you're accomplishing that right now. Not that he played fine last night, but he is so inconsistent.
The biggest issue with like Parker Stewart and Xavier Johnson is like, who else do you have at this point?
No one.
You gotta play them. I mean, you can't. I mean, we saw Anthony Leal was not, much better.
I'm talking about the future, actually. I would not be surprised, and I know that everybody can hear this on the side, but I wouldn't be surprised that he's gone next year.
Yeah.
I can think
it wouldn't surprise me if he's just gone from basketball, period.
No, I don't think that, but 1, 2, 3. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Are there any seniors? Official seniors?
There's one. I think Parker Stewart. This is his 5th year, unless he gets 6, I guess.
Well, I don't expect him back regardless.
Because I think Parker Stewart, from when I looked at this a while back, is the oldest when it comes to not only age but eligibility.
So they have to. How many scholarships? They've got 3 guys coming in, and that puts them over.
That's another reason that Trace probably won't stay back. The scholarship issue.
No, if he wanted to stay, he would stay. They would not. They would make one available for him.
Well, yeah,
but I think that I see him leaving.
10 seconds.
I see 5 people leaving, Kevin.
All right, here we go.
Sizemore gets you in the home you want today. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on a rainy Tuesday. It's not cold, Kevin, but it's rainy, which is fine with me. You can't really get out and do anything, but there's been plenty of days where I couldn't do that, and it was 10 degrees, so I'll take 60 and rain anytime.
The cold is coming after the rain, though. Apparently, it's supposed to snow by the end of the week, right?
I saw that. It's crazy weather we have here, man. It's been 60 for the last 2 days. Yesterday, you could have went outside and played golf or played in the garden, whatever outside activity you have. That low is getting down to 14 this weekend. It's like, wow, come on, man. But that's what happens in late February and March around here. That and normally tournament basketball. But Indiana is in grave danger of not making that happen again for what would be the 6th consecutive season. Is that I have to pull the book out. Surely that's a record. But of course, 4 may have been already. But is it fair to think Mike Woodson in his first season should have done more than they're doing right now in an overall sense? Or are we spoiled because they were 16-5 and they were deep into the tournament? They were a number 8-9 seed, which puts you in the middle of the pack, but you're in the middle of the pack. And now they're in the first 4 out. They've lost 5 straight, although 3 straight ranked teams they played, but could have won, should have won 2 of those contests and didn't do that. Man.
Soft early schedule. I think, the way the Big Ten schedule is set up, don't forget they played Nebraska twice early. They played, Penn State twice and didn't win, but one of them, they got the big wins against Purdue and Ohio State at home. They were playing very well at home. And then, 0-5 in February, but the schedule got much tougher. and you've got to close. And now you've got another soft spot on your schedule. You got to close the month on the right note, and really, take care of these next couple of games. You go home, you face a Maryland team that you beat by 13 on the road, and then you've got a Minnesota team that you beat by 12 at home. You go on the road to face them. So this is really a critical rest of the week. I will say that you face two ranked teams. You took them to the wire, one at home, one on the road. Ohio State, for that Wisconsin loss at home, you were right there. You had them, and you kind of let them off the hook, as Dennis Green would say, in that last
Let them off the hook. 1
minute and 20-second stretch where with the ball.
You want to crowd their ass? Crowd them.
One more. You really needed, either one more basket or one more defensive stop, and you got neither. And Ohio State played with a certain level of desperation that Indiana did not match. And when you're a team on a 4-game losing streak, you should be the desperate team at this point. And that's really the glaring indictment in my mind, is that there wasn't more desperation in that moment when you're up 4 and you've got 1:20 left of doing everything you can do to get a stop or get a basket.
Absolutely. 5 Left says everyone can come back for another year. However, he doesn't think Coach Woodson will keep them around if he can find a better fit via the portal or a late recruit. But if they're still around and you find that late, I think that's going to be very difficult for that to happen. But I do think, like I said, I think you're going to see 4 to 5 open spots. Trace Jackson Davis, you just have to consider him gone for certain. I don't know that Kopp leaves. Parker Stewart, I think would certainly probably be on that list. Miller Kopp, although let's be honest, provides not very little to the team. He has 2 years of school. He's probably in the middle of a doctorate program. I don't know that he leaves, and they can't force him to leave, but that is one that probably needs to be replaced if you can via the portal. Indiana has 3 guys coming in, like I said, and that's going to help with their guard play. Now, you have to remember these guys are freshmen, but Jalen Hood-Schifino is not really a freshman. He'll be a freshman plus by the time he arrives, because the situation he plays in at Montverde, the talent level they play against every day, that's different for them. They're used to a higher level of basketball and have to play at a higher level, but also having to play at a winning level to win games. I've seen him play. I watched him play games. They close games out. So it's about getting guys in that have that mentality, that have not been playing on teams that lost 12 out of 13 games, that lose 5 and 6 games straight. I think that's a big part of it. And those guys are coming. So I don't know. While Woody has done a lot of things this season that I've really questioned, at the same time, he does not have the personnel he needs.
Maybe the personnel he wants to, with regards to the 4-and-1 out offense, a 4-out-1 in offense that he wants, and the shooters. And they thought that maybe in Parker Stewart and in Miller Kopp, they were getting those shooters. I find it curious that, and I think this is one of the coaching staff's failings and Mike Woodson's failings. I mean, we talked a lot about player development in the offseason and how he was going to be more hands-on, but Jordan Geronimo, they have not carved out a role for him. He played only 3 minutes in that game last night, and you would think maybe at the end of that game, and I don't know if this is a stretch or not, but maybe a situational sub where you put a guy like Geronimo on Branham. You give a big, longer guy who's got some defensive ability, someone of that nature. Well, why he hasn't been, and I know the turnovers are an issue with him, but why not establish him or create a role for him as a defensive specialist, somebody that could help you on the perimeter or somebody that could help you maybe a little bit down low too at the end of the game. And I think there's been some failings there, and there's been, and we talk about Anthony Leal, and we talk about, certainly Christian Lander, and they haven't gotten better, but why haven't they gotten better? Where was the development in the offseason? Why have they not gotten better? And some of that falls on the coaching staff. I mean,
well, a lot of it falls on the coaching staff.
We were told or showed that this was going to be a developmental program, and guys that you were hoping or expecting to make jumps as sophomore have not developed. But that's on the players.
This is the second season. If this was their first season, they would get a pass, but it's not. Hey, we got to take a break. Chronic waiting in the green room. Chronic Hoosier up next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by Bubba's 33 down in Clarksville. If you're in Southern Indiana, it's right off of I-65. Pizza, burgers, beer. It is incredible. Stop in. Tell them you said hello. Back with more and Chronic Hoosier right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Whether it's a celebration. Hello, sir.
What's going on today, gentlemen?
Oh, just enjoying another post-game bit session.
Yeah, it's one of those rare days where the weather actually fits the mood in Bloomington.
It actually does. It set it in. It just, you look outside and you're like, piss on it.
Just miserable.
Oh, a game like last night, man, even trying to stay unbiased, it just pisses you off. The last two possessions, I was just pissed off. I'm like, God damn it, guys. Gee whiz. And I knew right there that was the game. I'm like, there's the game. You cannot go into overtime on the road when you have two opportunities to put that game away. I said, it's over. And it was.
When they I think it was about the 2-minute mark, Tamar got that jumper. Felt like it was a little, I don't know, it wasn't in the flow of the offense. He missed it. It was an opportunity though where they could have
up either.
No, they could have stretched a 4-point lead to a 6 or 7 at that point, and then when they come down,
puts the game. And to me, the game was over if they were able to do that.
Yeah, then from there, turnover, foul, miss, ball game.
They had a few times also, Chronic. I thought the 4-minute where they had like numbers in transition. One time Race was like right there because they had Ohio State tired, and Race was right there for a lay-in, and he missed an open finger roll. And then another one where they just pulled up because they were afraid of being baited into doing that again, I guess. But you could have an opportunity to go up 4 or 8 then, to stretch it from 4 to 8, and would have been in really good position.
Yeah, and it's so easy to focus on those moments at the very end when you ignore, I don't know how many layups they missed throughout the game. It's just abysmal.
Or Trace 5 or 6, those free throws, midway through, he went to that stretch where he was missing all those free throws. You win that game going away by like 4 or 5 or 6 points if you add those points,
And part of it, I think, is the cumulative effect of all those failures throughout the game, that when they get in high leverage situations, the fragility of knowing that everybody on the floor lets you down regularly. And it's like everybody is terrified of having to be forced into that position to let everybody down again. It's the opposite of clutch. It's fragility.
Yep.
They're 2-6 in quad 1 games, 3-4 in quad 2. Or 3-4 in quad 2.
Last minute, come into Brinker's Jewelers, voted the Tri-State's best jewelry store 9 years in a row, located at the corner of Green River Road and the Lloyd Expressway.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you on this Tuesday, a rainy Tuesday, but no worries. Brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer, and they're #1 for a reason. Right now, you can get a new 2020 Honda HR-V or a Pilot with everything. 0.9% financing. You can get a new Civic, Accord, CR-V, Passport, 1.9% financing. Get in there and get them while they're hot. Speaking of hot, Chronic Hoosier's with us now. How are you, my friend?
There's been better mornings in Bloomington. I'm not gonna lie, man. It's a rough one. I don't know that there's been a worse day so far this year for Kroger to neglect to put any of my coffee in the old order. But I woke up to the rude surprise of no caffeine in the house. So I'm over here sipping on some peppermint mocha, trying to act like it's a real cup of coffee. Just trying to figure out where the hell the season goes from here.
Well, Kevin's overlooking a cemetery, and we're being rained on all day, it looks like. So it looks like the perfect day for us to just lament what could have been. But this team still has a chance and a path to make the NCAA tournament. Talked about this earlier with Mike DeCourcy, but they've lost 5 straight. They have 3 games coming up, 4 games remaining, but the next 3, to me, are must wins. If you lose any one of those, you're going to have to do something double in the Big Ten tournament. But they have to beat Maryland at home. They've got to go on the road and beat Minnesota, and they have to come back at home and finish that with a win over a solid Rutgers team before going off to West Lafayette and taking that L, which would be highly expected. But those 3 wins. And then I still think they might need to win a game in the Big Ten tournament. I don't know. If they win those 3 straight, they may just be fine. But I'm not sure, Chronic, because right now I think they're on the outside looking in.
No, I think it's probably pretty fair at this point. It's really tough when you start looking at those teams that are in the bubble conversation when there's still games remaining. But I think it's probably safe to assume that Indiana's toast if they lose any of their next 3. Even if they win all of those, you cannot go up and lay an egg against Purdue. I know the committee will tell you that style points don't matter, but let's be honest, there's a whole lot of eye test that goes on when it comes down to those fringe teams. And right now, Indiana is not going to pass any eye test in the country. They still have some opportunity to win some games in the Big Ten tournament, because the way they're playing right now, they are heading towards extra games as things are trending right now. So it's just a terrible situation for a team that was pretty solidly in the tournament just a few weeks ago to be just literally down to their last breaths right now, holding on yet again, another winnable game on the road that they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. After really, an impressive effort in battling back from, I believe it was 11 points, 1 point, the deficit in the second half. You got a 4-point lead with a little over a minute left. We can write it off as some stumbles, unfortunate luck. Unfortunately, that's been a pattern that has persisted throughout the season for this team. I just mentioned it earlier. They're fragile. It's just a very, very fragile team. It's got a lot of flaws that are on full display. And unfortunately, they find themselves in yet another position where there's just no answers available when they're most needed. And I don't know that mentally this team is prepared for the stretch ahead of itself right now.
Kevin, they're currently 9th in the Big Ten Conference, sitting behind Michigan of all teams, who I think is going to fall because of what is coming up for them. Who knows, they could rally. But I look up at Rutgers. Rutgers has the exact same overall record as Indiana does at 16-10. But Indiana lies at 7-9 in the conference, while Rutgers is a robust 10-6, just 2 games out of first place. So again, that's another reason why that game with Rutgers will become critical. But also I think looking at this, 8 teams from the Big Ten will make the dance, but that includes Indiana making it at the end there. So, and that requires them winning those 10 games. I don't see Michigan making it. I think that this 5-game suspension by Howard is going to affect them. We'll see. Who knows? But that's a team that they're bumping against. The 9 teams are not going, I don't think, from the Big Ten. And right now, Indiana is bumping up against Michigan for that final spot.
Yeah, and that, it could be 7, and we'll see about Iowa. Iowa, they were in the top 25 this week, which I found curious because, they did beat Ohio State, but they only have 1 quad 1 win. Indiana has 2, and Rutgers has 7. So what does that tell you? I mean, if any of those three teams are the most deserving, it would be Rutgers for sure. But you could make the case if somehow Indiana Iowa is an 8-9 game in the Big Ten tournament, that could be a playing game for the 7 seed. And maybe you would see Indiana, a place like Dayton, in one of those 11 games. Maybe you would see Indiana and Florida in Dayton. That would be something, to 11 seeds, because Florida's back on the bubble after beating Auburn. But, and Dayton would be an easily drivable trip for Hoosier fans. But you might see that, if Indiana ends up with like 19 and 11, 19 and 12, or 20 and 12, or something of that nature. That would be. Would that count as an NCAA tournament in IU fans' minds, a first 4 appearance?
Well, let me tell you, if people think the quad 1 wins really matter that much, you mentioned Iowa, which is a great example. Chronic, they are 1-5 in quad 1 wins, but they're sitting 19th in the net rankings. They're 5-3 in quad 2s, and then 12-0 in the 3s and 4s. But most teams are that. But they're 1-5 in quad 1 wins, yet 19th in the net rankings. So that is going to make a tremendous difference for them. They would have to lose out, Kevin, I think, to not make the tournament. But Indiana is, however, sitting at 43rd in the net rankings, which is dangerous territory, but it's a territory that you can get yourself out of. It's still manageable.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's still enough basketball left. There's enough runway left in front of this team to pull up and to get themselves in the tournament. The problem is there's just zero room for error at this point. The pressure has gone beyond every game, effectively every possession, the way that this team has shown that they can let leads slip. We'll see if they're capable of it. It's going to be a massive test, though, because you've got a team right now that was short 3 scholarship players. I don't know if I'm fully comfortable calling Christian a regular rotation player at this point, but nevertheless, it's primarily at the guard spot. And now you've got your emergency point guard in Galloway, who is out as well. It's just a really, really unfortunate position. But for all the struggles they've had in the backcourt, this was the second half yesterday against probably one of the more favorable matchups that this team plays in the post. And your All-American candidate doesn't score a single field goal in the second half. All his points come off of free throws, goes completely quiet, not a point, a rebound, or even an assist. And I understand Trace was taking a lot of doubles and triple teams late in the game, but not even an assist for the final 11 minutes of the game. The struggles, the flaws on this team are widespread. They're throughout the bench, or all the way down the roster, rather. And, one of those games where when they're shorthanded, short of Tamar Bates, I think they got 2 points from Anthony Leal, and that was pretty much it. That was the only help that came. So they've got to figure out a way to get more contributions from more players on the floor, because that there's going to be inconsistencies from shooting. There's going to be inconsistencies from guard play, as well as in the post, for that matter, especially when they play teams that are a little more robust inside. All the more reason, though, you cannot have entire segments of the roster just go MIA for significant, if not entire, portions of the game.
Well, Anthony Leal actually 0 points in his 10 minutes. He missed his only shot and both of his free throw attempts, which came at the end of the game. And I'm not trying to pound on him, but as I said earlier, he's had 2 opportunities, Northwestern in this game, to ply his case for more minutes. We didn't see it. You've got, man, if you're a shooter, you've got to knock down free throws that are critical. And this was in the first half. He didn't do that. Tamar Bates, he played 25 minutes, was 3 of 11, 1 of 4. He was in there scrapping. Michael Durr, 9 minutes, picked up 2 personal fouls, missed his only shot. So this team does not have a lot of help. But also, you mentioned Trace Jackson just disappears at critical times too often. He was 3 of 9 in this game from the field and 7 of 13 at the free throw line. That is a ton of points left on the table, especially for a game that should have been won in regulation.
Yeah, no, there's really no excuse for it. And it's, it's tough to really pile on Tamar too much, because at some point somebody's got to take the shots. Credit the kid for getting them up. Hit some big ones late, missed some big ones late. Very much looked like a freshman, which is a tough spot to be in a high leverage situation like those minutes he got last night. Leal's one of those kids where he's, statistically he's one of the best shooters on the team. I thought Anthony's defense probably deserved some more minutes. Understand he seems to be on about as short of a leash as anybody on the roster right now. Eventually shooters got to get enough shots that he can pull himself out of something. What was I think equally frustrating on the opposite side of the floor, watching Branham continue to have his way, particularly in the second half, and really allow himself to keep Ohio State in contact, was just maddening. That there was no adjustment on the defensive end as well, and for a team that has been pretty stout on the defensive side of the floor throughout the course of the season, no differently than the offense tends to go through droughts and has its struggles. The way the defense just kind of implodes or drifts away from this team for stretches has proven equally critical as the scoring droughts, quite honestly, and it's something that they have got to fix. Because again, the margin for error is essentially zero at this point for this team. And as we've seen, they're going to go as far as their defense can carry them. It got them right back in this game, and it allowed the game to slip right away from them last night, in spite of the offensive struggles.
Well, looking up, Indiana finished the game, Kevin, missing their last 7 shots. They did not score in the last half of the overtime, 2.5 minutes, while allowing Ohio State to go on a 10-0 run. He played all that great defense for the entire game, and the last few minutes of the game regulation, they make mistakes, allowing them to tie the game to push it to the overtime. And in the overtime, I'm not going to say they quit, but they allowed a team to go on a 10-0 run, and they virtually did nothing about it.
Well, I was trying to figure this out. Was this a Bob Knight line? Fatigue makes cowards of us all, right? Or was this? I don't know if it was another coach that uttered that phrase and Knight has used it, but I feel like that last 2 minutes, maybe. But Ohio State should have been the more tired team, right? I mean, they were playing their 4th game in 8 days, and they looked, like a pretty tired team during some stretches in the second half as well. But Indiana couldn't quite get the jugular there. But I think that, just a combination of all those factors and the roller coaster game for Xavier Johnson, I thought, because, he did get to the free throw line. He did get him back in it. But some of those, that shot selection in the last 2 minutes from overtime, some of those drives were just ill-timed, ill-conceived. Again, it looked like the end of that Wisconsin game, that first Wisconsin game on the road, too. He goes through stretches sometimes where I think he tries to do too much as well, and it certainly cost him there.
Yeah, Chronic. So coming up, how do they regain their composure? Because composure is something I don't know that I've seen in this team this season, to be honest with you. And it's something they're going to have to come up with. They're going to have to win a game at home against a Maryland team that they've already beaten, but it's not a gimme. You're going to have to go on the road to Minnesota, again, a lower part Big Ten team, but it's on the road, and this team has not shown us, a lot of fight. And then you got to come back home and play a Rutgers team that could be for the season right there. The Rutgers game could be the determination on whether or not they're going to be able to go forward. Because if they lose to Rutgers, they're probably going to have to win at least 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. And I just don't know that they'll have that if they add another loss in the column.
I think we lost Chronic.
There he is. He's back.
No, I got bounced back in here. My browser loves to dump on me. No, I don't know. I don't know. I think if they're going to pull this thing out, if they're going to come out of this spiral, there's going to have to be some leadership emerge, quite honestly. And it's something that this team has been woefully lacking for a long, long time, quite frankly. And it's reared its head at some pretty significant points throughout the season. I mean, eventually somebody has got to go out
I got to lay that blame at Trace Jackson Davis's feet right there. I know he's listed as a sophomore, but realistically, he's a junior, but he's the man on this team. He should be the de facto leader, but he's not. And like I said, this team doesn't have a leader. And the fact that he's not, to me, that's disappointing in him. I'm disappointed in him for that. This is the guy who's probably going to go off to a professional career, and he's the main player on this team. He's the one that gets the accolades, the attention, and he should be leading this team. But I certainly have not seen that in any. I haven't seen it.
No, and he's the centerpiece. He's the focal point of the entire offense. It's everything. This team is a post-entry team hoping to get a kick out if they can't get a bucket inside. And that's why I emphasize the lack of assists in those final 11 minutes because it's his job to find the open guy. When he's drawn all the attention, he's got to make that pass out or around because him and Race have shown that they've got some chemistry when they choose to exercise it. But you know what? As easy it is, and I do agree, a lot of this falls at his feet, especially when you look at his closing time production. I'm looking across the roster. There's a lot of upperclassmen on this team, and understand not all of them have been.
I think we lost Hoosier. Chronic?
Yep,
and if he's
still here.
Back,
you got me.
All right. Keep on going, brother.
No, I'm just saying you've got too many seniors and juniors on this team who should be leading some of these young guys along the way. And instead, you've got Tamar Bates having to put the team on his shoulders in the final minutes. It's unfortunate that with that many upperclassmen on this roster, that there's such a void when it comes to the leadership side. And it's something that there's no magic pill for, is what he would say. Leadership, something you either got or you don't. And I'm not saying it cannot be learned, but there's still a lot of learning to do with this team because they have not demonstrated they have it to the degree that it requires to win games. It's not there. And, I'm going to put some of this at Woody's footsteps too, or at his feet as well. This is a team that has been in position to win a lot of games, and for a variety of reasons has found a way to let it slip through their fingers. And eventually it's got to start at the top. It's got to start. And I understand he's not making the shots. He's not making passes. He's not fighting for rebounds, but he's putting the guys on the floor that do. He's putting the guys on the floor. He's making the defensive assignments. And at the end of the day, these choices are cumulatively costing this team wins. And I just don't think we have seen the best that perhaps that bench is capable of so far either.
Yeah, and maybe, they called the timeout at 1:23, but I think he left a timeout or two in his pocket. Maybe another timeout there during that stretch at the end of regulation could have regrouped the team. And I know a lot of coaches say they don't like, having other teams set their defense in that situation.
And that's fine if you have a team that knows what to do at the end of games, but this team has proven time and time again that they do not know what to do at the end of games. And it's just like you're playing in the park, but not as good as the guy I see in the park.
Yeah, and quite frankly, the in-game execution has often been the worst execution of the entire game for this team when it matters most in those final minutes. When they're coming out of timeouts even. So I don't know what the answer is. I just know that the net result is it's way, way, way too lacking for this team to be where it needs to be right now. And that should be in the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's a 68 team field. And, unfortunately, while they've consistently sustained a top 20 defense, the offense is dropping like a rock in its efficiency. Their points per possession, I believe 5 out of the last 6 games, they've been below a point per possession, which is just quite frankly abysmal. And I don't care what your backcourt situation is. I don't care what your injury availability is. There's a lot of teams making a whole lot more with a whole lot less than what we're seeing from these Hoosiers right now.
Absolutely, and we'll see what they can do next as the schedule continues. Chronic Hoosier, cannot thank you enough, my friend.
I appreciate you having me.
You betcha. Chronic Hoosier brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. Of course, they're #1 for a reason because you can get the best deal there. As I said, you've got 0.9% financing, 1.9% financing. Great deals right now. AndyMoore.com. Get more to your door. We're back with Indiana Sports Beat Radio and Kevin Brockway right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Whether it's a celebration, Kevin Brockway, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Don't forget we have.
I know.
Clips.
Well, I'm gonna play those and talk about and mix those in with Kevin's.
Okay.
I know you. What'd you say you had besides a game story?
Well, I had the notebook story on Parker Stewart, and then I've got the Beyond the Arc as well. So, but
what's the story on Stewart about?
Just about up and down game. He scored some points, but he had struggles guarding Branham,
which is the story on him all year long.
Yeah, returning to the starting lineup with Galloway injured, but I'm just tired. So play a lot of the clips because I didn't get back to the hotel to bed till 1:30. Woke up at 7:30.
Trust me, me too. I didn't get to have breakfast though. Well, I did. I had a little microwave burger.
Well, they had free breakfast here. So.
Yeah, no free breakfast here. It's all paid for.
Good.
It's all paid for. Well, we've only got 20 more minutes, so you're good.
I know. Well,
no, we have less than that. We're 10:30 today.
Yeah, it's actually 15 minutes, 14 minutes, and counting.
Make sure that I don't fall asleep here on my terminal.
Oh, no, we'll just don't worry. I can talk for this amount of time.
Usually I hate rain. We're getting like flood type rain right here in Louisville, but on days where it's appropriate, like today, I enjoy the rain.
So did your boy go on? Did he leave on vacation yesterday? Josh Everett?
Yeah, they finally got the WKJK stuff sorted out, and he's off the rest of the week.
Now, that starts after the season, I would assume, right?
It starts July 1st.
Yeah, after the season.
And the bats, I think, is effective as soon as the season starts.
Yeah, well, that's really going to suck, man. That's a lot of content right there.
I know. I think from what my understanding is of it is that iHeart was asking for too much money and they didn't want to pay it, so they just went somewhere where they could buy for cheaper.
Buy what for cheaper?
The rights to play their coverage or whatever, or have their coverage.
No, but you said they're gonna try to go somewhere else. There's nowhere else to go. There's only one place you can go.
No, they have the bats have another station that they're on. I can't remember what they're going to be on though. It's not 93.9. It's something else. But we have 10 seconds, so here we go.
Week Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Jim Coyle here with you as always on this Tuesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you, brought to you by our good friends at Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. If you have trouble sleeping like Kevin Brockway does, you just need Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. They have this device. It is literally, you just put it in your mouth like a teeth whitening tray. There are two of them. They connect, and then it works to move your jaw. But you can literally have it in and almost hide it. If you're on a CPAP and all that stuff, it's worth checking out, man. AuroraSpecialtySleep.com right there in Indianapolis. Dr. Steve Green, former dentist, Bob Knight's first recruit from Silver Creek High School down there in Sellersburg, along with Brian Evans. Indiana basketball was on a post-game show last night. As a matter of fact, we're going to hear from Brian. He was on the post-game show with us last night, along with JMV, and a big thanks to both of them. Make sure you give JMV a listen. I know, Kevin, you're a big listener of JMV, right?
Yeah, well, we don't get 1070 down in Bloomington anymore, but I used to listen to him quite a bit, but we can't get that signal down there.
Well, there's this thing called
he was good listen.
The internet. You have to look up this thing on the internet.
I know. But I only listen in my car usually, so I don't have internet in my car. Yeah.
But awesome to have him on last night. Green County guy, but it's cool just getting him in a different format than on his show. But great to have him on. Great to have Brian on as well. Both of them together was awesome. Brian had some direct comments. I mean, he is saying, hey, he's not happy with how things are going. He's got questions. Why this and why that? So, that if a former NBA IU player is asking those questions, you cannot blame the fans for going nuts, asking almost the same thing, because some of it's painfully obvious. Why this player? Why aren't these guys developing? Why aren't they getting better? Why isn't Anthony Leal able to step in and do things? Why isn't Durr should be further along, although he's only been here a season, but he's a senior. Christian Lander, I'm still you can say he's younger. I get it, but I don't care. You still develop, even at your own level. You develop. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't gotten better, but it's still to the point to where they're afraid to use him. And if even an underage kid, but being here in college for 2 seasons, you get the workouts, the regiments, the knowledge, and still not much development. And I'm not blaming them, because you're starting to see a pattern. They weren't developed before that, but we kind of knew that. But now it's a different story. This staff is loaded with people that have basketball knowledge, Kevin. I mean, Mike Woodson, of course, his NBA experience. He played in college for Bob Knight. But you've got Thad Matta behind him. You've got Dane Fife, who was a 9-year assistant for Tom Izzo. Armand Hill behind him. He's got other people that he talks to. He has got possibly the biggest group of anyone I know. And yet Indiana is where they are right now.
Yeah, you kind of touched on that too. And Landers had some injury issues. Jordan Geronimo, another guy. I don't know why he hasn't developed and why they haven't, given him maybe the rope to develop a little bit more in some of these games as well. And carve out a role for him, as maybe a defensive guy, because we saw last year on Luka Garza did a pretty good job defending him. Maybe you could have put him on Liddell during that game. So I think
how bad is Logan Duncombe? I mean, not bad. I know he's a freshman, so I know for a big guy, this is not a rookie league for big guys. I get it. The Big Ten loaded with massive big guys. But there's no way that there couldn't have been plenty of opportunities to get him in there and get him a taste to start getting some acclimation. And he has barely been seen off of the bench. I don't know if there's injuries going on there or whatnot, but we haven't heard that. But it just, with their limits, I wonder why they're not doing more.
Yeah, and I think with Logan also the issue was, some conference games or some injuries, so I'm sure that set him back as well. But, coaches have to trust you, and that's both offensively and defensively. And I think with, Mike Woodson, that trust starts on the defensive end of the floor. And we're just seeing right now, and especially with Finney being out, it's apparent, not enough good perimeter defenders on this team right now, which is really hurting you when you face guards like Branham, when you face guards like Johnny Davis, that it makes it really hard and puts your defense in a bind. When I first looked at the video of the last play, it looked like, to me, it looked like Trace almost lost Liddell. But when you examine that play, further, it was actually Race that was going up, anticipating Branham going to his left and, not turning around and not seeing Liddell on the backside. So really it was Race's assignment. It was Race's blown assignment. Could Trace have switched over maybe a little bit, but he was kind of occupied on the other side. But it all started because everyone was so scared of Branham because you didn't have anyone that could guard him one-on-one, or, harass him or get him in a situation where he was, uncomfortable in that game. And then Branham in overtime too hit some big shots and was just too tough to guard because you don't have that guy. Like I watched CJ Gunn a couple of weeks ago in Lawrence North, and he could be that guy, and he could be a guy that could really carve out a role as a 3-and-D guy, as a guy that has that great athletic ability and length to be that defender that you could deploy. But he's still a year away.
He's been Mr. Fourth Quarter in high school this season. His scoring has just jumped. Last summer at the AAU level, he's probably averaging 10 points a game. He's probably averaging 25 a game now. I've seen several 30-point outbursts, lots of games where he has had double-digit points in the fourth quarter. Exactly. That's the kind of mindset guy that you want coming in. Last night, Brian Evans joined us on the post-game show, and like I said, he was direct with some of his thoughts. Let's hear exactly what he had to say.
This is all, to me, this is a snowball effect from the Northwestern game. And
I
got to be real honest with you guys. I lost, I don't want to be a negative, personality here, but I lost so much enthusiasm, and I haven't gotten it back.
Yeah.
Like I just cannot believe, and you can't sugarcoat this, and you can't be, you can't be soft about these guys. I mean, we brought in some transfers that are, veteran players, and one in particular that really bothers me is Parker Stewart. I'm having a real hard time rooting for him. The fact that he played for his father, and he should have a different perspective on, what a coach's life is like, and trying to, motivate young guys to play and to do things the right way. I just can't get over the fact that Woody brought these guys in here, Durr and him and Xavier, to lead and say, hey, guys, we want you to be the foundation of our rebuild and the reconstruction of Indiana basketball. I cannot get over the fact that they thought that was a good move to sneak out and run around in, 10-degree weather in Chicago. I just can't get over it, and I want to, but I just think that they just took a dump on the season. And it's just really hard for me to root for them now when I think that we all care more than they do.
Took a dump on the season. I mean, that's coming from a former NBA IU player, a Bob Knight, a guy who was just, it's a different era, no doubt, but they still see it as your team. If you're on the team, you're a part of the team, be a part of the team. And he went on, he really talked about those guys leaving, and it's a great listen. Go listen to what he had to say. He talks about the lack of leadership of the guys like Xavier Johnson and Michael Durr, and that they take two of the young guys with them. He said if he'd have been there, he would have done something about it. But it's definitely worth a listen. You can find that on our YouTube channel, of course. Also, Mike Woodson met with the media last night. Let's hear what he had to say.
We come out of timeout and we throw the ball away. And that's kind of what triggered it. I thought it gave them hope again. If we come out of that possession at least shooting two free throws, or at least attempting a shot, it eats into the clock. We didn't even eat into the clock. We threw it away trying to feed it inside, and then they came down and we fouled. And then the last possession before it went into overtime, I thought with 15 on the clock, we played as well as we could play it, and then, we lost our man, at Liddell at the rim, man, and he was able to dunk it and send it to overtime, man. That's probably the biggest possession of the game.
Well, no doubt both of those last possessions, gigantic. Also, Xavier Johnson met with the media. Let's hear what he had to say.
I mean, I ain't gonna describe the real play, but I mean, we just trying to get the ball down to Trace and make Liddell foul or make a play at the rim for Trace, and if we didn't get it down there, and we got a turnover.
Yes, they got a turnover. They again just didn't get it done. You talk about that play at the end of Indiana, missing on the switch, whatever. It just comes down to Ohio State made the play that they needed to make, that Indiana did not when they had two opportunities to do that. They just fumbled the ball away. They didn't take care of the situation. And, I could talk about it all day. It's like one of those that really sticks with you. Kevin, what's coming up next with you? I know you got some articles coming out.
Yeah, and obviously we'll have some Maryland coverage. Also, a little something on the football side. I know Mark Cooper, too. I had a chance to talk to him at Lawrence North also a little bit about what went into his decision to delay signing day one day and signing as well, and some women's basketball coverage and some combine coverage coming up the following week. Big Ten women's tournament. Indiana women, another tough one, losing to Iowa too, so they're out of it for the Big Ten title contention, unfortunately for them.
Really, I did not realize. Really, they are? Damn.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it would. I think it would take a miracle for them to get back in it, but. Those back-to-back losses to Iowa really hurt, and Caitlin Clark is something else. She's quite the player, leading the nation in scoring for Iowa.
Yeah, that unexpected loss that they had in between this one and the Michigan loss really got to them, obviously, which sucks for a team. But you know what? If you have a great end of the year in the tournament, which they are absolutely going to be in the tournament, they're a top 10 team. So good luck to them as that goes forward. Man, it's been an absolutely tremendous day. I have to thank Kevin Brockway from CNHI. Make sure you go follow it if you're in Southern Indiana, Jeffersonville, if you're in Anderson. Where are the other cities, Kevin?
Yeah, Goshen, Kokomo, Logansport, etc. Everywhere.
All those CNHI papers, you can find Kevin's stuff. Big thanks, of course, to Mike DeCourcy from Big Ten Fox and the Sporting News. There you can find his bracket coming out here soon in a couple of hours at CBB on Fox. And also thanks to Chronic Hoosier. Most importantly, thanks to you guys, John, the producer. Without you guys, we have got no reason to be here, and we wouldn't be able to. So until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.